everybody, it's Kira and welcome back to my channel. So today I have my August wrap-up and haul for you guys. So filming this a couple days early, so it's possible I might finish my current read before the end of the month, but if that happens, you'll find out in my next month wrap-up. So, I'll just get straight into the books that I bought this last month. So I actually traveled out to Massachusetts for about 2 weeks this month. So it was a work trip for the most part. So I was very safe, don't worry. I was very careful and sanitized everything, and they had us wearing masks and everything, so I was safe traveling. But my grandparents live out in Massachusetts, and they have a college program that runs adjacent to their church. It's called Berkshire Institute for Christian Studies, or BICS. And they have a college library there, but they needed some help like switching over. They had an old system that was just on like one old desktop computer, and they wanted to switch it over to a new system that uses the internet. And so they needed somebody to do about 40 hours of work, and they were paying me for it. So I got to fly out to Massachusetts, and while I was there, they had some books that they had gotten as a donation that they didn't want, so I picked them up. So 3 of them are C.S. Lewis books that I have not read. So that is, if I can pick them up correctly, The Great Divorce, Mere Christianity, and The Four Loves. So I love C.S. Lewis as an author, and I've read Narnia and the Screwtape Letters, but I haven't actually read, and I read, what was that other one? It was kind of like a Greek myth retelling, but it was like Cupid and Psyche, but kind of flipped. I can't remember what that book is called. But anyways, I haven't actually read any of his other Christian books. I know Mere Christianity is one I've been wanting to read for a really long time. So I was just able to have these books. These are all like much older copies of the books, but I'm excited to get to read them. And then the other book that they had was a fiction book called The Tourist by Olin Steinhauer. And it's kind of like a spy book. So I'll just read the first sentence from the inside flap. Milo Weaver used to be a tourist for the CIA, an undercover agent with no home, no identity, but he's since retired from the field to become a middle-level manager at the CIA's New York headquarters. And then there's some cool spy stuff that goes on. So it looked really interesting and sounded really cool, so I thought, why not? It was free for me, so why not just take it? And then the other 2 books that I got this month are from, we went to this place called the Book Barn, and I'll put pictures here, but it was just a really pretty, just used bookstore out in the middle of nowhere in this barn, and they had a bunch of books like sitting outside that you could browse, but also a bunch inside. It was wonderful, and if being a librarian doesn't work out for me, that's what I want to do, is work at a bookstore that is out in the middle of nowhere. So I got 2 books from that. So one is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. It was $2, and I was like, I have heard such great things about this book, but I haven't read it yet, so I'm like, I'm just gonna get it because it was $2. And then the other one is actually an ARC, and that is Judging a Book by Its Lover, A Field Guide to the Hearts and Minds of Readers Everywhere by Lauren Lido. So this was actually on their free table, so this was free, but it's actually an uncorrected proof, so it's an advanced reader's copy. So this book sounded interesting, but also like I don't really have ARCs. I just don't get them from publishers or anything. So I thought, why not just get it? So I have it, and I'm very excited to read it. So that's it for the books that I bought this month. So now I'll dive into the books that I read this past month. So I started off the month with Who Do You Serve, Who Do You Protect? This is a kind of hard to explain. It's a collection of articles written by different authors for this website called Truth Out, which is definitely like a more left-leaning website, but it kind of just details police brutality and the prison system, and then the last couple articles actually go into like alternatives to policing and what that could look like and where different places are like starting to try using it. So it was very interesting. I don't know that it was very helpful. I mean, I think for me it made me think more about just the prison system in general and like why I don't think about it and why do I let myself dehumanize the people that are in the system, that are oftentimes stuck in this system because of unfair circumstances and unfair rulings. So I'm not sure that I would necessarily recommend this to everyone, but it was quite interesting to read, and just one more step in helping myself educate about the way my world works and the ways that it could work differently. I think that was the most interesting part for me, was the second or the last couple articles that were about alternatives to policing, because that's not something that people really talk about, is like what alternatives we can use and what it might look like in a world without the police system as it is now. So I think that was the most interesting part for me, but yeah. After that, I reread The Kingdom of Copper. I remembered the cliffhanger ending of this book, and I remembered like a few specific things about this book, but there's so much that I had forgotten. And this book does an amazing job of just like continuing to build everything until the last like 150 pages where everything happens and it's crazy. But it's funny because it doesn't, like, it feels like it's building, but at the same time, so like you can tell that it's building, but at the same time, like, you're still advancing the story and you're still like interested in what's going on. So this continues to follow Nari, Dara, and Alizad as they continue on their specific paths of things happening. Nari as a character is just so interesting. I love her so much. She's a very intriguing and like compelling, that's the word I'm looking for, a very compelling character, and you really feel for her throughout the whole series. And this one, there's a lot of things with Alizad and his family that continue to unravel, and you continue to learn more about this world of Daevabad and of the Jinn in general, and it's just so amazing. And I remember this cliffhanger ending and how upset I was that I had to wait a year to find out what happened after it, because I was like, what? You can't just end a book like that. So it's really good. Again, please go read the Daevabad trilogy. The first book is The City of Brass, and it's amazing. So then, right after that, I read The Empire of Gold for the first time. Again, don't know why I procrastinated reading this for so long, because it killed me. I loved it. It was so good. I've always loved Nari and Ali's relationship. Their friendship in the first book is just so pure and cute and amazing, and I just have always loved it. So then in this third book, you see more of that develop, and especially after, trying not to give spoilers here, but after the cliffhanger of what happens in the second book, the third book, thankfully, I was really worried that the third book was going to pick up like years later or whatever, because sometimes they do that where it doesn't start right after the book ends, but it does pick up pretty much right after the book ends, which I really appreciated. So I loved this. You get even more into the world of the ancient creatures of Daevabad and like the history of their world and their cultures. It's just so good. And I loved the ending of this book too. And I really appreciated the redemption arc that happened. And like Dara's character as well is just, you feel for him, but at the same time, like, I didn't know. I struggled with him. Sometimes I struggle with the like conflicted like evil characters. I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with that, but as much as I didn't, and I definitely love Ali more as a character than I do Dara, but Dara's storyline is also just so intriguing, and like, it's really cool to see his whole arc and everything come to fruition in this book. So yeah, I loved it so much, gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and can't wait to reread this sometime in the future. Speaking of rereads, my last 2 books are rereads. So I read A Torch Against the Night by Salva Tahir. So this is with the Penguin Teen read-along that they've been hosting. So this past month was Torch Against the Night. I actually annotated it this time, which I hadn't done before. And can I just say, it's on page 9. Page 8 and 9 has so much foreshadowing of what's going on with Laia and Elias and like what is going to happen. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize it because I've not read this as many times as I've read Ember. So I didn't put those pieces together. But when I was looking for it this time, I was like, there's like 4 or 5 things that are foreshadowed on these 2 pages. Either in this book, of stuff to come in this book, or in the 3rd book too, or stuff that hasn't even quite happened yet. So I loved this. I think what I've realized is that I love the first half a lot better because Laia and Elias are like physically in the same space together. So even in the first book in Ember, like they are both at Blackcliff for a majority of the book. So they're both like kind of physically in the same space. But in this book, like, so they go off and they're trying to get to save Laia's brother. But then they end up splitting up. I'm not going to explain how because spoilers, but they end up splitting up. So I think the second half of the book, like, I don't love as much. Also, Keenan, why? Also, Izzy, why? About that. But yeah, so I think that's kind of what I've realized is I enjoy it a lot more when Laia and Elias are like physically in the same space, which is also, again, part of why Ember is my favorite because you have a lot more of them interacting than necessarily in this book. I don't know. So it's very interesting, and I can't wait to reread Reaper because I think that's the book I remember the least because I've read it the least amount of times. So I think also Helene, both in this book and in the third book, the thing that bothers me about Helene is she's way too overconfident in her ability to outthink the Commandant. Like, she does it in the end of this book and pretty much all throughout the third book, is she's trying to stay one step ahead of the Commandant and then makes mistakes because she believes that she is a step ahead. And it's like, no, you're not. And why do you think that you are ahead of the Commandant? Like, she obviously has more influence and has been alive longer and has been in the Empire longer than you have and has run Blackcliff for years. So she's obviously more prepared for it. And I think that's just part of what bothers me about Helene and her storyline. So I'm interested to see, because of stuff that happens in the third book, and especially near the end of the third book, I'm really interested to see what could happen in the fourth book, in Sky Beyond the Storm. I mean, I'm excited for it regardless, but yeah, so I don't know. It's very interesting. Ember will always be my favorite out of the three anyways. Sky could take its place, I don't really know. But yeah, so I reread Torch Against the Night. And then my other reread was The Light Between Worlds by Laura E. Waymouth. So this is, I read this when it came out back in 2018 and fell in love with it. So partly because it deals with something that I've always found intriguing and loved. So it's very Narnia inspired. So this book is kind of split in two, and it's about three siblings, two sisters and a brother, who lived during World War II, and then they get magically transported to a magical world and live in that world for like 5 or 6 years. And then when they come back, no time has passed for them. But this book very much more deals with how each of the three siblings deal with those feelings, and that just them suddenly being tossed back to their childhood selves and being not in the magical world. So one of the sisters, Evelyn, feels way more at home in the magical world of the woodlands than she ever did in England, and so she struggles a lot with how to deal with being in our world again. But the older sister, Philippa, never really felt at home in the woodlands, and so she feels way more at home in England. And so the first half follows Evelyn's story and the second half follows Philippa's story, and just kind of how they deal with being back in our world. So, like I said, it's very Narnia inspired, but that's something that C.S. Lewis doesn't ever delve into, is like what the Pevensey kids must have felt like having lived and ruled for 15 years in Narnia and then coming back as their childhood selves and having to live in England again, which I think is something the Prince Caspian movie actually does well, is like show like Peter's anger and resentment and bitterness at being a kid again when he used to be the High King of Narnia. So anyways, it's really good. I really love this book. I think there was a lot of stuff that I felt back in 2018 as far as like loneliness goes that I don't really feel anymore. So there were certain things that I'm like, I remember this being impactful when I read it for the first time, because it was one of those books that I read like at the perfect time. But I don't feel that way anymore, which is really cool to see like my growth as a person as well. But I did still annotate it a little bit. There's a lot of really good quotes in this book too. Big trigger warning for PTSD and self-harm. I think that's it. But so be careful if you are going to read this. But it's well written, wonderful, magical read, and I love it a lot. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to follow me on social media, all my links will be in the description as always. Comment down below, let me know what you guys read last month. I'd love to chat in the comments. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!